So everyone, you're into the last session of the day here on the social games track at Pocket Gamer Connect's Digital Next. Day 3, the morning's almost over. We've got a panel to send us out here. Remember, of course, that we are continuing this afternoon with 2 more virtual stages, if you like, 2 more tracks this afternoon. And of course, we've got Thursday and Friday, Beyond Games, the standalone conference all about the future of gaming, which your ticket to Pocket Gamer Connect's Digital Next entitles you to do. So do join there as well. So I would like to welcome to the stage our final session of the afternoon, a panel about what techniques we can apply from hyper-casual games and bring it into living games. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Aaron Orr, who is the news editor of PocketGamer.biz. Hi, Aaron. I'm going to let you introduce your guests and take the panel. Just a reminder to all the folk watching this that one of the advantages of watching it live rather than the recording is that you can drop questions into the Zoom. So do drop questions into that Q&A box at the bottom of the window there. And Aaron, you can grab them from there at any time. But if you want me to help with anything, just shout and I'll pop back in. I'll be watching from the wings. So over to you and your panel.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Okay, so hello everyone. Today we will be speaking about what techniques, as Dave mentions, we can apply from hyper-casual games and bring into living games. And with me today, I have Evelyn Mora from, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the founder of Digital Village, and Costantino Carrega Bertolini, the Vice President of Product from TapNation. Costantino, would you like to begin with a little introduction about yourself and what you do at TapNation?
Sure. So nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm Costa, VP Product at TapNation, as Aaron was saying. So TapNation is a hyper-casual publisher. So we focus mainly on publishing hyper-casual games. I do myself especially focus on everything product, gaming especially. So from ideation, coming up with new ideas, market analysis, and things like this, to game design afterwards and improve the metrics and bring the games until basically publishing and scaling worldwide.
Okay, good to know. And Evelyn, would you like to say what it is you do at Digital Village?
Definitely. So thank you for having me. Digital Village is a real-time sustainable MMO metaverse with its own marketplace, blockchain interface, and metaverse built on Unreal Engine.
Okay, brilliant. Very, very kind of modern, interesting things from both of you here. Hyper-casual and blockchain are definitely at the forefront of the industry. So to start, I thought, let's talk about what some of the defining characteristics of hyper-casual and live service games and what differences do they have and similarities they share. Costa, would you like to start?
Did you call me? I'm not sure.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Oh, I think it's possible that Costantino's frozen. I think maybe.
Yes.
Let's maybe take the question to Evelyn while our stage manager tries to help to. You've frozen for us. Oh, there we go. I think you might be back.
There we go. You're back. Yeah, you're back, Costa. Yeah.
All right. Sorry for that.
That's okay. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, if it's possible, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So what are some of the defining characteristics of hyper-casual and live service games? So what differences do they have and similarities that they share? Obviously, you're coming at this from the stand of a hyper-casual developer and publisher.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for hyper-casual, obviously, we have games have as the common characteristic that they're usually very snackable. Games you can play for very short sessions. They are usually very relatable and simple games. Like the themes used as well as the art style are, generally speaking, for a very broad audience. Whether it's geo-wise or gender-wise, everything. And finally, they're usually very straightforward, satisfying, and relaxing experiences. So that more or less would be the kind of the basics of a hyper-casual game.
And what would you say are some of the big similarities that they share with live service games, because obviously as hyper-casual games don't have the same kind of lifespan as maybe a live service game would have. Would you say that they're trying to keep with what's trending?
Definitely. I think that something they have in common is the fact that you will be brought to do many sessions on the same game, potentially short ones as well sometimes. So that's what we aim for as well with the hyper casuals. Sometimes very short levels, people will keep coming back to them. And on top of that, I think that generally speaking, they try to, both hyper casual and live service games try to aim for low barriers to entry in general. So try to attract as many users as possible easily, and then try to hook them in the long term as well.
It's interesting stuff. Evelyn, do you have more to add?
I think Costa took the cake. Not much to add to that.
So I can move on to the next question. We'll start with you this time then, Evelyn. What would you say are some of the key things developers need to think about when they're developing a hyper-casual game?
Well, I think that key things to think about is what kind of interactions users have with one another. I think essentially it's the key. What kind of or what kind of tools the users have on the platform, I would say. I don't know if that's the right answer, but
there's no right or wrong answers. So we'll move this back to Costa, as obviously coming from the development side. What would you say are the kind of things at the forefront of your mind when you are developing your, you've got TapNation has 13 games, like over 350 million downloads. So you know what you're doing on this front. So what advice would you give?
I think it goes back a bit to what I was saying earlier. So like the general attributes of hyper-casual games are also the ones that you should really keep in mind when developing them. So as I was saying, like very relatable and simple themes, mechanics, and the art style, that's for sure. Then the other one I was giving, again, like the satisfying, relaxing, rewarding side of things. So like, again, that you should apply to mechanic, theme, and art style again. So, like basic themes such as love and money, things that everyone gets, everyone wants. Hyper-casual is very straightforward in that sense. So that's the ones you should go for. And yeah, I think that's the most important things. And again, keep it readable, simple, very straightforward, and attractive things.
Yeah, so just hit the nail on the head with some of those. And we'll fire back to Evelyn with our next question. What do you think some of the benefits hyper-casual games can bring into a live service? So kind of the features that Costa's mentioned already.
Can you expand on that question, please?
Yes. So operating a live service obviously is live ops are a long-term kind of endeavor, and with hyper-casual games, it's often as not, the shelf life isn't as long. So what could you add from hyper-casual, the kind of the quick, fast kind of user interaction, bring into a live service to keep a live service perhaps going for longer? What are kind of transferable features between the two?
Well, honestly, I have to say that we are not building a hyper-casual game. So I have to like come forward and admit to everybody that this is something that I have in my to-do list in like Q3 next year. So to me, this is all about this touches on the roadmap of Digital Village moving to mobile. Right? This is how it all translates to me. So maybe I'm not the right person to tell you what are the best characteristics or differences between these things. But what I can say is that I'm very much focused on design. And I think that where I see, games and social games in particular going is, in real time sort of socializing world, if that makes sense. And so I feel like for instance, if we think about Digital Village, this is something that I've been repeating constantly, is that we fall into this kind of luxury box, unfortunately, right now, because we are very limited when it comes to device, right? When it comes to our design and interaction. So when we are already working on it, but we are really far from sort of that particular space, that when we go to mobile or we migrate into these different devices, we need to do some really serious thinking about, you know, how Digital Village translates and how our game mechanics and the social element translate into this sort of low tech, maybe, if you will, or yeah, environments. So I think that it's all about design combining to our everyday lifestyles. So I would like to play games that actually bring benefit to me. They're easy to access, but they're also fun, but they're useful. So I think gaming is going to sort of come into this or become way more useful and less kind of entertaining, or maybe adding that usefulness to that entertainment. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially with the kind of the quick, easy to access kind of elements of it, and combining those with like a service such as Digital Village. So it's like bringing techniques, or flipping the question the other way around, rather than hyper-casual techniques into live service games. What about live service games into hyper-casual games? So Costa, what kind of approach would TapNation take to doing something like bringing typically live service features over into one of your hyper-casual games?
Yeah, I mean, as you may know, like hyper-casual games, especially in the beginning, were mainly depending in terms of monetization on interstitial ads, so like forced ads that you just have to watch, like the unpleasant ones. So with time, we're shifting more and more towards, for example, rewarded video monetization to, in general, make the user experience again more pleasant for users and for players. But something that we're obviously always looking at as well is IPs as well, and always new finds, new ways we can find to cost of acquisition for users. That's where we can really see a lot of benefit for us to have players get subscriptions and especially those kind of other internal app purchases. So something we're definitely trying to learn from living games is their capacity to be efficient in terms of live ops, to have like a real meta game that really keeps player coming back to the game for not only days, which is what we usually aim for, but also weeks and months. It's not the case yet, but so that's definitely what we're trying to get from that kind of expertise. You know, Hypercasual is a very young industry, and a lot of us were not into gaming a couple of years ago. So we're really trying to understand more in terms of design, how we can, you know, like not only attract users for a cheap cost, but afterwards keep them for a way longer time. As in, we attract, like we acquire a lot of users at very low cost, and some of them might just stay one day, but some of them might be interested in stay way longer. So we should have the structure to also keep those users that are interested in a more long-term experience, interested in our game for a longer time.
Yeah, so I guess this can be flipped on the other side for Evelyn and say, what kind of techniques would you use as Digital Village to keep bringing users back and keep this prolonged experience? And as Costa mentioned, the meta game, something that people keep coming back to, even though there may be competitors in the hyper-casual industry. There's a lot of very quick competitors, and whenever there's the new game, people will quickly flock from one to the other. How would you sustain something with long life? What are the techniques that you'd use?
Yay, finally a question I understand. So I would say that it's all about, when it comes to live games, it's all about sort of reading your audience, understanding your target audience, if that makes sense, or your user base. So ultimately, I believe that I don't like the idea of kind of developing one game and just doing it over and over again, but I really like the idea of the game living and changing. and sort of evolving with time and kind of giving users a lot of space and agency and in-game editor tools, especially what we're doing in Digital Village right now, for them to sort of create those moments and create that sort of passing hype and situations and experiences in real time. I think, as you guys know, a lot of hype is happening in the gaming industry right now. It's very sort of, I think it's very saturated in a way, because I again think that it's really important that the games are useful. So when something is useful for the user, they'll come back. So it's not just for the benefit of the platform, just dropping or selling something quickly and doing quick profit. But I think that just as it is in any industry, it has to be engaging and involving the player into the actual building and development of that particular platform. So I would say that it's a form of art. You have to keep curating and be really active with it. And I think that those games that are flexible and can pivot like left and right really quickly and just sort of react to what's happening in our world will win and stay relevant and consistent.
Yeah, so a really interesting point you've made about user-generated content, because that is definitely coming, like a lot of people are definitely coming to grips with that being the main focus at the moment. And Costa, how would you see user-generated content being implemented in hyper-casual games? Because as Evelyn mentioned, it is always what is trending and what is happening now, and the turnaround for hyper-casual games can be quite quick. So something that's user-generated, do you see there being a space for that in the hyper-casual sector?
I think it's obviously extremely interesting and something we should look into for sure. I think it's I see it kind of something quite far from hypercasual at the moment, but what we're starting to see already is a few hypercasual games where some iterations were tried, for example, with the creation of tracks from the users, right? It's like very basic form of user-generated content. But it's the kind of thing that is starting to make sense in hypercasual. I think people are, the quality overall of the game is increasing a little bit. So users are also more engaged and they want to have a more personal experience. So I think it's just the beginning, and it can go much further than that, but I definitely think it's something that works with hypercasual. It's just that our current production cycles are so short, so this kind of stuff obviously takes more time, and because there's also potentially the building a community behind it and everything, that's obviously makes it much larger project. But yeah, definitely something I think that is very potentially very interesting to use with the hyper-casual players, especially as well when we have in mind potential interactions over with social media. And since we acquire all of our users from social media in the first place, they're surely the same people who would be interested in sharing their new track, their new character, and stuff like this.
Yeah, user acquisition is, of course, essential for any long-term growth, and social media is a great way to do that. Question for Evelyn now about that, actually. When you're targeting an audience, you mentioned coming into like the kind of mobile space, or maybe Q3 next year going into development. How would you approach kind of targeting an audience for your service? What makes you decide what platforms are for which audiences? Kind of what data do you look at when you're doing that?
I just want to add that, kind of jump left and right. I want to add that when building a game, the psychology is super important. So I really sort of, it depends on your audience, essentially. You have to analyze them, know them. And I think that if I understood your question correctly, do you mind repeating it? Sorry, I just arrived from Spain, so I'm just a bit like...
No problem if you're a bit jet lagged. But yeah, so I was saying, when kind of targeting an audience, because you're doing a live service, the audience you want to evolve and expand. When hyper-casual games normally target a specific audience, and they're on mobile, so they are focusing on who is on their mobile, who's going to be interested in this. Let's say if it's a new ASMR game who's into ASMR and they're going to play this new game. With a kind of evolving service, as you mentioned, something that keeps changing, how would you keep expanding your audience to kind of cater for more people?
Okay, so I think that we have to be aware that the audience is evolving themselves. They're becoming more demanding. As Costa was saying about the idea that essentially the user wants to have things very personalized, individualized. I think that hyper casual games are very addictive and people play them to kill time most of the time, right? So how is that beneficial? You know, it just feeds into your social anxiety. I have my phone full of hyper casual games just because of testing, but they're super addictive. And I think that we need to be aware of how, you know, those platforms or experience make people feel. And I think that target people based on that, basically what kind of experience you essentially leave the player with. Does that make sense? I mean, maybe I'm just like this boring professor type of person coming to like a game jam and ruin your vibe, but I have to say that ultimately how hyper casual games are functioning right now, they are not sustainable. They are not useful. They are fun, they are addictive, but they are not useful and they are boring. So in the end of the day, I mean, at some point you'll drop them. I'm talking about myself. So so ultimately coming to final point, I would say that as we have seen what has happened with Fortnite and Travis and all that stuff, where it all began, and how gaming has expanded to become this multidisciplinary industry all of a sudden, everyone's going into gaming and so on. Everyone, whether you're creating a hyper casual game or a metaverse, or you're building something on Mark's Horizon world, whatever you're doing, you just need to put that user into a higher stand and understand that it's not just going to social media and acquiring people and then making sure that you keep that flow coming in, but we have to just maybe change our relationship and approach to how we are interacting with any type of technology and interface. And so for Digital Village, I really want to kind of go to, or what we are talking about a lot with the team is, how can we expand these concepts of play to earn and play to own and so on to sort of like this play to build type of approach in the hyper casual world or the mobile games for Digital Village. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I guess you've touched on some of the pitfalls that there are when developing a hyper casual game. Of course, there is massive demand for them. And that's why there's so many of them in the market, and so many of them do so well as well, because they do have that.
Aaron, why there is a demand for them? This is the question.
Well, because I think that's definitely a question for Costa to answer, which he can cover with my next question as well, which is covering definitely some of the pitfalls that you find when releasing a hyper casual game that Evelyn has mentioned. They are fun and addictive, but people find they don't add a lot, so they move on to the next one. So how would you combat that with live service features in a hyper casual game?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, obviously a lot, what explains the existence of hyper casual games in the first place is, as long as people will keep taking 5-minute metro rides or going to the bathroom, there will be a demand for hyper casual games, right? Like at least to some extent. Then obviously, as you guys were mentioning, the market evolved a lot towards making the game even shorter, even just more attractive, just purely based on user acquisition. And so that's why like the competition blew up, and games now have like sometimes retentions that are like 20% day one, right? So we're really talking about very low retentions in general engagement. But again, CPIs are low, so it still keeps happening. People still want to play these games. So there's the main reason. Thing is, I think that because a game has such clickbait first user experience, and just something that looks nice, you just want to click and play it. doesn't necessarily mean that the game has to be boring and bad in the long term just because the theme is hypercasual, right? What I mean is that we have now studios that have been working in hypercasual for 5 years, 4 years, for example, and they started as two friends in their bedroom, so they were doing very short games, but now they are a studio of 30 people. So they still have that understanding of the hypercasual market and how you can make something very attractive, very simple, and that people will just something very clickbait. But afterwards, they're able to add enough depth to these games to have people play them for way longer. And often, like now, we're seeing more and more games like that, and that's partially where the market is evolving. So on one side, yes, we keep making those very short experience games that are just there to be attractive and distracting for a couple of days, and that's it. And on the other side, some of them we're able to, for a certain amount of players, to really make a more long-term experience, because the expertise in hypercasual is evolving as well, and we're able to, as mentioned before, add some meta, more levels, more interesting mechanics that can be unlocked while playing. So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
It's very interesting kind of to hear from both of you on both sides of this, where neither is yet that well integrated in the other side. And I think that's where we'll move on to some questions from our audience. Definitely, I think Evelyn will be kind of a bit more of your kind of forte here with some of the questions. So we'll go chronologically. This one is addressed to you, Evelyn, from Zara Arakilan. I hope I've pronounced that right. Said, Evelyn, I know you're into fashion, which is great. So am I. That's good to hear. I would like to know, the best way of contacting you, she would like to know.
Join the Digital Village Discord.
There is also the PGC Meet to Match or our Discord as well after as well. We'll move on to our next question. The main appeal of hypercasual for me is the instinctive appeal of a simple game that you can jump into. Is there a space to have more micro games within larger persistent games? I think, Costa, this would be good for you to start on.
Sorry, I'm just reading the question. So the main appeal of hypercasual for me is the appeal of a simple game. Jump into, okay, space to have more micro games within larger persistent games. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like I think multi-mechanic games are definitely a thing. Like, I mean, here I'm going to go to console games, but so a bit further. But for example, I don't know if you guys have played It Takes Two. Quite a nice game. There specifically, I think you have a lot of these micro mechanics, right? Micro games are pretty much something you could find in a hypercasual game. It's kind of a compilation of those with a larger game around it. So I think that, yeah, it's definitely something that's like when we were talking about what you can bring from hypercasual to bigger games, living games, for example, definitely there is a possibility to take some of those very simple mechanics in hypercasual that sometimes can be quite original and fun, but rather than just having that for one game, also be able to bring them to other games. If you think about it as well, like Nintendo games sometimes are quite similar to hypercasual as well, right? The mechanics are sometimes the same. Very often, actually, mechanics from Nintendo are brought to hypercasual. I think if you played Mario Odyssey, for example, I think that's 50% of those mechanics were then reused in hypercasual and became hits.
Yeah, and I mean, with like micro games as well in something, maybe Evelyn, you could expand more on this with user-generated content. Do you think there is a space for a kind of larger hyper-casual game with lots of different micro games within, with user-generated content, maybe a platform for that?
Yeah, I mean, Digital Village when we go to mobile, hopefully. Okay. Yeah. I'm kind of stuck still with the past questions, but I'm not going to go there because we can talk about, actually, Costa would be I would love to connect and talk about the whole usefulness and purposefulness and meaningfulness of hyper games and how that can look like in the future. Because you were saying that you go to, you have 5 seconds or 5 minutes and you kind of go and play a game. And then I'm just like, Do you have to be a brain dead for that, or just distract yourself from like awkward social anxiety, or can you just make some money or earn some Google storage? I don't know. Just yeah.
Yeah, so we're like, I mean, I guess play to earn is very kind of, everyone's looking at that kind of sector at the moment, and we'll move on. That moves on nicely, segues into our nice question. If Evelyn, you could start with this one. Do you think that blockchain or NFTs and play to earn mechanics will inevitably feed into and take over mobile games in a similar way that free to play effectively overcame premium? So what we've seen with Hypercasual being at the forefront of the top charts for app stores all over the world. Do you think that play to earn will start to slowly take over that place?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think that we are there yet. I think we're in the very beginning of this whole blockchain NFT situation when it comes to games. But definitely, and that's what I'm kind of stressing here, that the audience has evolved, you know, and I feel that entertainment is all good and fun, but you know, who says that we can't have fun doing everything we do in life? Why does things have to be painful in general, you know, for us to having to kind of escape? But that's maybe a bit of a utopistic idea, but definitely I think that hyper casual games will change. I mean, we're trying to definitely do that, and it doesn't need to be super complicated or super high poly to, it's like super detailed visuals to do that. It just has to be sort of intelligent. Yeah, I think again, the user, you know, in the hyper casual games, in my experience, user has very little agency. It's a lot about just like brainless like movement rather than sorry, not an offense, by the way, you guys. No, I play it myself and it's super addictive. But that's what I said with Digital Village as well, that it's really addictive. We have to, you know, be mindful of that.
Yeah, of course. And let's go on, Costantino. I was just going to ask you to expand on.
Yeah, I was just quickly getting back to what you were saying earlier. I think, like, I mean, obviously, you having such an important project as well, working on, I can absolutely see how you can like seek meaningfulness as well in the gaming experience, which I think in the case of hyper casual is not necessarily what we look for. So I think that definitely I totally see your point, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The reason why hyper casual games exist, I think it's sorry, the sun came to my window, so my face. Anyway, no, the reason why hyper-casual games exist is the same reason to why TikToks exist, right? People just need to, apparently, and it's more of a psychological, sociological question, but people just need to go and just swipe and see different things every 5 seconds, because the attention span has been reduced for many people, and that's apparently maybe a problem, but it is what people are looking for. So that's, I think that hyper-casual responds to a demand in that way. Regarding the NFT / blockchain question, I mean, I'm obviously really not an expert on my side from that point of view. To whether it will really like replace mobile gaming, that's something that I'm skeptical about, because I feel like behind NFTs, especially, blockchain is a bit broader topic, but I think there is a notion of investment, a notion of like earning and everything, which I feel we could already have before as well with casino games. It's obviously a different example, but I feel like not everyone was going to that kind of thing. Not everyone is looking to making an earning out of their game. Not everyone is looking for that. So I feel like definitely it's going to be bigger and bigger. I don't know if it's going to overtake completely the mobile space the way freemium has done with premium, for example.
Yeah, it's really important, the kind of bridge you've noticed between kind of casino games and hyper casual, and the way that could combine to be something that is a play to earn kind of hyper casual model. One for Evelyn that kind of expands on this. As blockchain adaptation adoption is becoming more widespread, it's still fairly niche. But what do you think needs to happen, or will need to happen, to kind of tip this to the mainstream?
It's a technical question, because I think that there are, I think that the blockchain business models or how blockchains kind of coexist needs to be upgraded, because they are not very interoperable. And, you know, whether it's a blockchain game or NFT or hyper casual, whatever it is, it has to be accessible and super seamless. And currently it isn't. And it sort of creates these closed worlds and silos of users and people and experiences that can just dry up, right? So I think that it's a technical question of interoperability. And yeah, and which I think that will come with time.
Yeah, and I guess Costa operates in the mainstream. So what kind of techniques would you say Hypercasual could offer to kind of Evelyn to keep that kind of mainstream kind of, I guess, entrance to kind of mainstream users? What tips could Hypercasual games give to live services such as kind of blockchain or NFT metaverses?
And same as what Evelyn said earlier, really understand your user, really understand what they like, what they need, and why they might want to download your game. What we do a lot when we do some market analysis is to understand, for example, why specific, to try to break down what is attractive to users and to people in general in specific things. For example, we see a lot of things in common between a hyper-casual game and something like a Squid Game as a TV series from Netflix, right? It's very straightforward. You have it's very easy to recognize. You understand right away what the concept of the series is. You know exactly how it starts, where it's going, it's structured, it's easy. So we try to see those patterns in like pop culture, in everything, social media and everything people like, and try to use that in our game as well.
Yeah, so I guess it falls hand in hand with evolution and having this constantly evolving model that it's constantly adapting and kind of matching. It's similar to what kind of Roblox would do with their metaverse, and constantly kind of user-generated content that matches with what people want as well. We've got time for probably 2 more questions. We'll move on to this next one. So someone has asked this morning, one of our speakers, Sashi Lieberman, was talking about how we tell stories even in quick games using the environment, the background of the music, and using very little text. How are these lessons useful for bigger shared experiences like the metaverse too? So Evelyn, would you like to start this one?
Sorry, I was reading questions. Sorry.
Oh, okay, I'll repeat it. So from one of our speakers this morning, she was discussing how we tell stories in quick games using the environment and background and music without a lot of text at all. How are these lessons useful for bigger shared experiences like the metaverse too? So effectively what hyper-casual games do, but with a storytelling aspect to it.
Right. I'm not sure if I understood the question, but I think that you mean storytelling, like how people interact with the game, essentially?
Yeah, so how are the storytelling kind of facets used for larger shared experiences where storytelling isn't conventional, where it uses outside?
Well, you know, building a real-time sort of the social space where we give our users a lot of agency, and they have a real-time positional audio chat that they communicate with, and you know, whether it's you know, stepping on the sand or water or whatever, sound and movement, everything is like super optimized on Digital Village. I think that those all kind of are part of that storytelling. But also when we are talking about because we present a Digital Village as a mix of gaming, social media, and e-commerce. So the point with the mixture of social media and gaming is maybe that since we are on blockchain and we use in-game currency and so on and so forth, I think our game mechanics, gameplay mechanics is in general part of that storytelling, part of our governance of the platform, which it makes it, you know, it's kind of how we tell the narrative by curating the users, if that makes sense. But yeah, and I mean, these are live experiences that our users get to experience. So There isn't much sort of storytelling, although we do have 300,000 parcels, and one parcel is 200 square meters. So it's a huge platform that we have, and we have 10 zones right now, and each zone is different, built with a different architect, and has a different sort of story and atmosphere and sound and so on, and design. So I think that each of these zones have their own sort of narrative, which kind of then translates into what kind of experiences in that particular zone you can experience.
So let's kind of flip the question around for Costa and talk about how storytelling could be integrated into a hyper-casual game, because typically there isn't much of a story, just an objective to kind of follow, and it is very quick and intuitive. But taking a lesson from live services and kind of metaverse experiences with adding a story, do you think that could add to the longevity and kind of user base of hyper-casual games?
I think it's definitely something you want to look at. The problem is, at the same time, I feel like it's a risk for the hyper-casual user experience. Like, first of all, since we want to attract as many users as possible and as broad audience as possible, we'll try to like have the least possible any type of theme or something that could, you know, be attractive to part of an audience but not to the other one. So say we are start telling a story of the character is a knight and needs to kill a dragon or something like this, right? Well, part of the audience might not be into fantasy and they might just drop the game right away. Versus if I just go straight to the mechanic and to the gameplay right away, then most people will just start that, right? So there's a risk theoretically that through storytelling, you might actually lose users in hyper-casual rather than just having them hooked up right away, right? The other side, it is obviously something that we should, and I think we will more and more take into account to keep players engaged and involved more in the long term. Maybe the beginning can still be very straightforward and start very fast. You play right away, but after a few levels, we start creating a story which you will end up being, you know, involved with, and you want to get to the end of it.
Yeah, I guess that touches all of the bases with each side of the coin. I think that is all we have time for today. I'd like to thank both of you for being here and each sharing your experiences and everything. And Dave has welcomed himself back.
Hello. Yeah, I've brought myself. Thank you very much. A round of applause. That it's just me. You can only hear me, but you'll have to imagine that coming from all the attendees. And unfortunately, that's the nature of doing things in these virtual stages. But very soon we'll be back to live, and you'll be able to hear the applause of the audience in person. Thank you very much for that. Really, really interesting talk. I know originally it planned to have a third attendee, but she wasn't very well. So that's why there's just the three of you talking. But it has been a really interesting 40 minutes covering a wide range of topics. So thank you very much. We'll have to bring the track to a close here. So thank you, and we'll leave it there.